Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And so today, as is most frequent with us, you have myself and Lucy with you at the onset, and we'll be joined by Desatu in a little bit of time. The format will be close to what it typically is. Lucy and I have chatted a little bit before we started, and it's probably going to be a little bit more free flowing, maybe a little less monologue in the beginning, but we'll kind of see how that goes. This particular session is really meant for individuals who maybe have done none of this exploration before. Kind of a background, some information about what this experience has been like for individuals who do explore and the ideas and the themes that are associated with it. And movement that's going on that if you haven't been interested in this, you may have no familiarity with, at least as far as words and ideas to put to it. You may definitely have experiences that you're having in your life, but you may not know how to frame them. Maybe we'll say in the moment. So we'll take just a moment and let my my more encompassing me, maybe I'll say, my friend, take center stage here. So it'll take just a moment. So once again, we would like to greet you and express, as we frequently do, our appreciation with being able to interact with all of you the way that we do this way, because it adds so very much to our experience of existence. So, as was mentioned, what we would like to do is we would like to interact with those of you who, by and large, have had little interest in exploring this aspect of existence, the existence that, from your perspective in your life, is an existence that belongs to other individuals and perhaps not so much to yourself. Though we will suggest to you that it is very much about you as well. So, what we would like to do today is provide some terms for you, give you some ideas of what it is that interests those individuals on your planet that explore metaphysical topics, that explore spiritual concepts and ideas. The types of experiences that those individuals have, what it is that interests them about that exploration, and why it is that you may choose to become more involved in that process than you have been previously. So we'll begin in the early part of your 1900s. And in that time period, in that century, there were two events that, as they moved into the fullness of what they were, they involved most of your planet. And this was your First and your Second World War. Most people on your planet were in some way, shape, or form involved in those events. Now, there may have been groups of individuals on your planet, in various countries on your planet, that were not impacted by that had no knowledge of those events, but there were not many on your planet. And even if those individuals didn't directly have knowledge, those events changed all the things that were occurring around your planet, all the ways that trade functioned, all the ways that communication was going on. It impacted many, many, many things on your planet, regardless of whether you had an awareness of it or not. And because you are interactive with all those other areas of your planet, the changes that you saw in your life, even though you were unaware of why those changes were happening, you experienced nonetheless. So, from this perspective, as individuals have explored spirituality, as they've explored what's called metaphysical concepts now, for the last, possibly 75 years, in growing numbers anyway, certainly much longer than that, as far as smaller groups were concerned, there's a understanding and awareness now, whether it was the priesthood that you may be familiar with, whether it was monks that you may have heard of, whether it was shamans, whatever the name that you would like to apply to individuals whose vocation, possibly we could say, was this particular exploration and understanding. At one point in your history, it was those individuals that did that exploring. And the rest of the individuals on the planet went about their life and they had some awareness of the things that those other individuals explored, but their lives were focused on different things. One of the things that the individuals who are deep into this exploration now, and if you observe this theme on your planet at the moment, you may realize that it now involves many, 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 many people on your planet. It is no longer just the priesthood or just certain order of monks or certain shamans in particular countries. It is a large and growing number of individuals on your planet. So, what these individuals explore, what shamans have explored, what your priests have explored, is information, awareness, understanding of events that occur that register with parts of your psyche, perhaps we'll say in this moment, that you don't typically use on a day to day basis. Typically, you use what you term your five senses. However, you also are familiar that there's this thing out there called your intuition. And even if you don't explore like this, you can have some familiarity with your intuition. Your intuition will bring you information that in the moment, when you look around and you use your five senses do not support in that moment. It provides you with information that when you look at your physical reality, there's no way of saying that, yes, that information came through my eyes, through my nose, through my ears, through whatever might happen to be. You just have that information. And there are other ways of getting information that you will have show up as part of this experience, but sometimes you don't pay very much attention to. The individuals who have explored this in various orders earlier in your history, or now as your numbers of explorers have grown, those individuals have become increasingly aware of those aspects of information showing up for them. So even though within history, individuals have had those other types of senses, maybe we'll call them in this moment, for information to show up for them, As the last few decades have shown up and come around and expanded, those abilities are enhanced. And they're enhanced not just for the individuals who have an interest in this exploration, but they are enhanced for everybody, including individuals who don't really have any interest with exploring what we might call those wider or deeper aspects of who and what you are. You may be quite content with what your physical life is about and have no interest in understanding what individuals who delve into spiritual and metaphysical ideas explore and have, you could even say, an inspired or an excited way of approaching. None of that may move you in the same way. But we're going to suggest to you that the reason why so many individuals on your planet now have an interest in this exploration is because there is a movement that's going on with all of you on your planet that's changing the way that you will view your existence. If you pay attention to the events that happened in your 1900s, from the very inception of that century until the last year of it, you brought a large amount of change to the way that you interacted with your planet in your lives. You invented many, many, many things, especially when you compare that to many, many centuries before that. For many millennia, human beings on this planet lived in a very similar way. They lived very simple lives. And then you began to change all of that. And so in the last century, you made large, sweeping changes in what it was that you decided to do with the way that you lived your lives on this planet. As the end of that century came to a close, you began to shift more towards what you now call information technology. And as this particular century opened up and began to move forward, this has moved to the forefront of what it is that you're exploring. Your computer systems and the devices that are associated with sharing information amongst yourselves have taken the forefront of how it is that you explore your reality. All things that you explore, all ways that you interact with each other, all ways that you interact with yourselves in those regards are associated with this particular type of technology now. If tomorrow you had none of that availability at your disposal, you would find it very, very difficult to do most of the things that you do on your planet right now. These types of changes in how you develop technology around you are very much a reflection and a growing reflection of how it is that you interact, we'll say perhaps in this moment, in those spiritual aspects of who and what you are. You've noticed that as technology has developed, information technology has developed, it has become easier and easier and easier to communicate with anybody, any place, in almost any fashion you would like to share information in an increasing number of ways. This is a reflection of what your natural abilities are. So, individuals who've done this in their lives intentionally, when they interact with each other, they typically will share various experiences that they've had. And these experiences are new to them at certain points, but it's also experiences that they have heard about as they've become associated with this exploration, this metaphysical spiritual exploration. So you may find, or they may find, we'll speak in that context for a while yet, they may find as individuals who explore that their dream life becomes much more vivid for them. There's a huge amount of information that shows up for them that they're able to bring back into their then waking consciousness. They may find that that happens during the day in daydreams. They may find that their intuitional sense becomes stronger and stronger as they go through their day. They may find that they have information showing up for them about all sorts of things, and all these things show up in their life the way that their intuition told them it was going to. They may have an individual that they're in conversation with all of a sudden pause, and they see a shift in that individual. And that individual shares information with them that has a deep meaning to them. And then they go back and they continue the conversation as the individual that they once were, not even knowing perhaps that they shared information with them. Individuals who explore, they may be walking down the street and hear a voice from they don't know where saying something to them. Or perhaps there's a bird that's sitting on a lamppost and they have information, audible information, come from the bird. Maybe they're walking down the street, and as the breeze blows, somehow there's a meaning that the breeze is conveying. You could walk into a bookstore looking for whatever it is you're looking for. And as you pass a shelf, there is a book and a title on the book that seems like it's lit up with neon lights. It catches your attention, like an old friend you haven't seen for 15 years, but you know them very well, and you pick their face out from a group of other individuals. There's all sorts of experiences that individuals who are explorers in metaphysical and spiritual circles have. And though those experiences can be new to them, frequently they have become familiar with information that these types of things can happen in your life. And so when they occur, even though they may catch them off guard, they won't shake them really in a strong way. But what we'd like to share with you in this moment is that this movement that we mentioned a short time ago, this change in the way that you're exploring your existence, as your information technology has blossomed, it has in effect set you up to make a step to move into an understanding that is a little different than that. To this point, your changes in your environment have been around you. They have been about what you have made changes to the things that you're interactive with, your mobile devices, your computers, your automobiles, your businesses, your airplanes, whatever it might happen to be, things around you. This movement is about you. It's about how you are going to change. And this has been happening for some time now. This is not new. This is in a very palpable way to now an increasing number of individuals. This is about 126 years old, this movement. And you are all involved in this movement. It's not just the individuals who consider themselves to be explorers of who and what they are, that are aligned with metaphysical and spiritual concepts. It is all of you. And because it is all of you, the experiences that we just spoke about, which are just some of the experiences that individuals can have, you may be having in your life. You may come home for lunch from your place that you're employed and toss your car keys in a dish next to, or maybe on a table, that is a place where you always put your car keys. And then you eat your lunch and you go to get back in your car to drive to work again, and your keys are not there. And you look around for them thinking maybe they fell on the ground or whatever reason you may think they disappeared. You can't find them, so you grab your extra keys. And your keys continue not to show up. And so you use your extra keys. And then when you're at work, maybe 9 days beyond that, and you open the middle drawer in your desk, there are your keys. Not in the dish, but in your desk. Perhaps you go into your closet to grab your favorite sweater as it's late fall and the place that you live is a little cool in the fall. And you can't find it in your closet anyplace. And you look all around your house and you ask the individuals that you are close to that have been to your house if they remember seeing you wearing it recently. None of them mentioned that they've seen you wearing it recently, but you know that it's been in your closet. And maybe 2 months from that point in time, you visit your parents' house, and your parents live maybe 500 miles away. And as you walk into their house, there draped across the back of the couch is your sweater. And you ask your mother, "What's my sweater doing here?" And your mother will say, "Well, sweetheart, you left it here the last time that you visited." This, however, is not your memory. Your memory is that you never took your sweater when you visited. Your sweater was in your closet. You know that you saw it within the last couple of weeks. You may have processes at the place that you're employed that when you come to work one day, they are different than they were the day before. But it's only you that seems not to remember that this is the way it's now done. Everybody else seems to be quite familiar with the fact that this particular thing has been expressed like this and for some time now. So there may be any of quite a number of events that can be happening in your life, regardless of whether you explore these types of ideas or not. Because if you are here on this planet, you are part of this movement, and it is occurring.
Why? Why would things like that happen?
Things like that would happen from our perspective, of course. And now, it is difficult to live on your planet and not have some awareness of this. Whether you call it the soul, whether you call it the universe, whatever you may call it, there's this idea that you are something beyond your human experience. And within this time period, that something beyond your human experience is going to be something that you are going to become increasingly familiar with. Just like the 6-year-old is contained, and all those memories is contained within your experience now as the adult, this you is contained within, perhaps in the moment, we can say a more expansive version of you. An aspect of you that, like you, are much more familiar with your world than the 6-year-old version of you was. That version of you is much more familiar with creation than this version of you is. And in that familiarity, it understands that the rules that you apply to your life right now are applied only from this perspective. There are different rules that actually can be applied that eventually you will become familiar with. So the idea is, as unusual and strange events happen in your life, if you're not familiar with the information that individuals who are exploring spiritual and metaphysical concepts are familiar with, you can wonder about perhaps the grasp you still have on your rationality, on your psyche. You may wonder if you are losing touch with what you may call reality at the moment. You may be hesitant, anxious to share the information about the experiences you're having with anybody. You may wonder if perhaps your mind is losing its grasp on how it, we'll use this word in this moment, should be interacting with the world. You may question yourself. You may be reticent even to talk to somebody that you may consider to be a professional in this regard because of what you have some anxiety may occur if you do that because of the nature of the event that you've had. So we'll pause briefly just to see if there are any types of input.
Well, I don't know how many people are having those experiences, but I do know people are having the experience of being raised, for example, in a religion that they now question, but they haven't settled on what they do believe now, and they don't really have a good framework for knowing, what is God and what is my relationship to God and what is the purpose of my life. And so it feels like there are many really kind of foundational questions that I'm hearing people express that aren't yet into the realm of how did my car keys end up at my office instead of where I put them or thought I put them. But I know there must be a reason why you're talking about these experiences. And it sounds like you're talking about them in a way that's like to kind of give us a heads up. Like, don't be surprised if things start to shift around and they don't make sense in the moment. And I appreciate that heads up. But I also feel like a lot of people are still struggling with who am I and what is God and how what is my soul's path in this lifetime.
So, of course, the individuals on your planet, within your experience, when they contemplate something larger than themselves, their ideas, of course, are going to be heavily influenced by their experience. It really would need to be that because you can only utilize what you know to attempt to explain ideas and concepts that are beyond what you know. Because if you don't have that information, you just don't have the information. You have to attempt to make that information seem palpable, digestible to you in some way, shape, or form. And so, because you express yourselves a particular way in this planet in the form that you do, as separate individuals with borders around them, of course, when you imagine something that is greater than you lean in that direction also. You lean in the direction of an individual. And because your experience of yourself strongly or historically has strongly reinforced the idea of a singular you, and your senses allow you to experience only so much of what's around you. When you think of terms of the concept of a soul, The way that you imagine that is that the soul is encompassed by you. And the language of some of the religions that you're associated with will lend themselves to that expression also, that you have a soul, that the soul somehow is a quality that you as the human being possess. From our perspective, the concept is that that expression of you is actually a more encompassing expression of you. That expression of you has at its disposal, like the adult you in association with the 6-year old you, much more awareness of its reality and association with, and we'll use this term because it's familiar with God, than what you may have familiar with in this moment. And so the questioning that individuals have is in regard to this shift that you're going through. Because if you think back historically, even though individuals would have questioning about what is God, they didn't question the way that they question presently. There was a, perhaps we'll use the word satisfaction in the information that they got from the other individuals whose, maybe we'll say, job it was to do that exploring, to have that information, to understand those things. But within this movement of yours, as the information that lies within you begins to bubble to the surface, there's an awareness that happens also. And sometimes it's not a very tangible awareness, an awareness that there's more to this experience, there's more to the explorations and the explanations that you've attached to your experience than meets the eye, maybe we can say. And so in that, you begin to question anew. You question the models that you have produced for yourselves. You question the explanations that you've given to yourselves so far. Because your experience is in the midst of changing. The way that you experience yourselves is in the midst of changing. And so, as that occurs, you will need to develop new ideas, new models, new language to help to, we'll use the word define in the moment, but it'll be a flexible defining, but to define your experience. As you've done, again, many times in your last century, and more frequently so in this century, think of in this century the models of interpersonal relationships that have changed and how there's a model that's moved to the forefront now where individuals do not consider themselves to be either male or female. They may consider themselves to be both or neither. It's not that those individuals have not been in existence on your planet. It's just that them coming to the forefront and expressing themselves openly is something that has not occurred previously. And it's occurring now. It's occurring now because within all of you, you understand the changes that are happening within you. You understand that there is more to your experience than what there has been in the past. And so you are opening doors in increasing ways to those more of your experience. And this is one of them. But when you do this, of course, you will do it in juxtaposition to the ideas that you already hold about whatever it is in your life that you are opening those doors to. And so there's going to be unfamiliarity. Many times with individuals on your planet, embracing change is something that can be a little bit unsettling for you. You like things to be reliable. You like to understand how things are. Now, that doesn't mean that it's all of you. And in this time period, in the last number of decades, an increasing number of individuals are becoming a little bit more comfortable with change occurring in their life. And this will be an important thing because what you will find out about yourselves is that and we'll use this word in this moment in the context of our conversation, as your, perhaps we'll say, again, within the context, your more natural you, change is something that you are quite used to. You flow and you move and you express things differently, you interact with things differently very easily, in contrast to the way that you've done things in your lives in physical reality. But even there, again, if you look at your last century, and increasingly so in this century, you brought change into your physical reality in an increasing way. So you have made yourselves or given yourselves an opportunity to become more familiar with change in a slower way as your last century unfolded. And now it's increased. And change comes to you at increasing speeds all the time. And that will continue. So, this reality, as individuals who are deeply into the exploration of the wider, deeper, broader aspects of themselves, are familiar, is heavily influenced by the beliefs that you carry about your life, what you believe to be true about your existence, what you believe to be true about existence. Beliefs are filters that you utilize to explain things to yourselves within this reality. Why does this occur the way that it occurs? And you build a belief to explain it to yourselves. And this is associated with all the things that you do on your planet. It doesn't really make any difference what the thing is. If you make a choice in your life, regardless of what that choice is, there is a belief associated with why you chose to do it that particular way. Individuals who explore your existence to varying degrees understand this about your existence. They also understand that within this time period, what you are doing is understanding that beliefs eventually will be more about choice. In other words, you will understand that beliefs are kind of like a walk in closet full of clothes. You can walk in and you can choose to wear any garment that you would like to. Right now, you have a proclivity to choose only certain garments to wear at certain times. And you like to do that over and over and over again. It's become quite familiar to you. Now, that's fine and that's worked very well in your society historically. But in order for you to express yourselves in a more expansive way, to allow yourself to be aware and to act on an increasing number of choices, you have to see all beliefs as equal. You have to see all beliefs as something that you can choose to wear, shall we say. None better than the others. And so, one of the things that individuals are working through, and it's a very large thing, all individuals are doing this, are the concepts of what you believe is better, what you believe is worse. So the concepts of good and bad, right and wrong, better and worse, those are things that apply all the way across the board for you. One of the other things that individuals are working with very strongly in this time period is the idea of preference. Your preference versus somebody else's preference. And the belief that says that whatever it is that you prefer is the right way of seeing things, and whatever it is that somebody else prefers, the way that they choose to make their choices, is not as valid, perhaps we could say. So, acceptance in that regard is something else that you will all be working on here, because there's an awareness within, we'll just phrase it, consciousness, that your ideas of cause and effect are a theme that you've been exploring, but they're not actually the way that things occur. And this is something else that you'll become increasingly familiar with as you become more familiar with who and what you are. And the reason why we mention this is because you believe in the moment that if somebody makes a particular choice, it needs to lead to a particular outcome, and not only for them, but for you as well. You believe that it's the actions and the choices of individuals around you or circumstances around you that will be what it is that brings your experience to you. This is something else that individuals who explore the concepts of spirituality and metaphysics are beginning to understand works in a different way, actually. That there's an interaction that occurs between you and, you can say, the rest of consciousness, you can say all of energy, you can term it the universe, you can say fate if you want to, you can use a whole variety of terms. But there is an understanding that you've utilized historically on your planet as to how and why things occur. And that approach has led to the experience that you've had. And so if you are observant, you'll see that your approach is beginning to change. And as you pay attention to that, you will see that individuals in an increasing way will begin to understand that your approach has everything to do with the type of an experience of your life that you have. And they will focus more on that and the ability to shift their experience of life dependent on how it is they're approaching that experience of life. So there's many themes that are associated with how your experience of your existence comes together. And if you're an individual who hasn't had any interest in exploring any of this, there's a lot of activity happening around you and in an increasing way impacting your experience that has got to do with a lot of themes that you may have no familiarity with. And so it can be confusing to you as you start to ask questions, as you start to have experiences. And so we realize, of course, that it is quite not only comfortable for you, but supportive to you to find yourself amidst and amongst individuals who see things in the way that you do. It can typically be a difficult thing to be in association with somebody, close association, especially with somebody who sees things in a way that is quite different than you do. You like to associate with individuals who see things in a similar way. It has a tendency to make you feel more secure about your own choices in that regard. So, as this type of information is presented to you, and as you think about this information, and bring to mind some of the questioning that you've been doing, some of the experiences that you may be happening, you can realize that there is something else that's going on with your existence. And you may be aware that there are an increasing number of individuals around you who are doing the same thing, who are questioning. They may not share some of the experiences that they're having because, again, like you, they may not be able to explain those experiences, and they may feel a little bit uncomfortable with other individuals knowing about those experiences. But you can see that individuals are, in increasing ways, looking at their life differently, questioning things about their life that they weren't questioning before. And this will continue because this is the road that you're on. This is your next development in how your lives will become different. And again, it's not about the things that you create any longer. It's about you. It's about how you are changing. And this particular exploration you will find will afford you with the opportunity to explore in a way that previously you may have used the idea of exploring your solar system and your galaxies and your universe in this type of a far reaching way. But the exploration of yourself will move into that place as your exploration that will be increasingly expiring to you, and understanding that that exploration is an exploration that has no boundaries to it.
So, what's an example of what that looks like on a practical basis, exploring the self? How do you do that?
On a practical basis, again, things that you may notice that weren't part of your experience before. Let's say you go to a lake, to a beach. It could be a small lake, it could be a large lake, it could be the ocean. Doesn't make any difference. And you look out over the water as you typically do. But as you do that, you have a feeling experience that's different than what you've had before. The sound of the waves, the sound of the water, perhaps the wind as it comes over the water, strikes you and brings up an emotion or a feeling state within you that is much different than you've ever experienced before. Let's say that you observe two individuals in conversation, and one of those individuals is offering advice to another individual because the first individual made some type of an error, let's say. And as you listen to that conversation, all of a sudden, it seems like you can feel the way that the individual feels that's being instructed by the other individual. It's as if the emotional state that they're going through is one that you're able to share. You're driving down the street, maybe you're coming home from work, and you get this real strong idea in your mind to pull into the supermarket on the way home. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't think there's anything I really need, but this idea to pull into the supermarket seems quite powerful. And so you do it and you walk into the store and you're going, well, maybe there's something that I forgot that I need to get. And you start looking around the shelves. And as you're halfway down this aisle, somebody calls out your name. And you look up, and here it's this old friend that you haven't seen for 8 years. And you are in discussion with that individual. And as they're in discussion, they mention that there's a company that a good friend of them works in, and they're looking to hire a particular individual. And that job opening is the opening that you've been looking for the last 3 weeks. And now you become familiar with that particular information, and you can choose to act on it or not act on it. And so the thing is that what will begin to happen with people in an increasing way is that information will show up in your life that will be in some way advantageous to you, or you may have challenges in your life that are there to help you move beyond things that limit you in some way, shape, or form, that allow you an opening that you haven't had previously, that put you in a position where you feel freer to make choices that you weren't making before, which again is advantageous to your experience of your life. So it can happen in many, many, many different ways.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So you're really referring to noticing these things when you talk about exploring the self, noticing rather than some particular practice beyond that. Is that accurate?
It is. So, and paying attention to ideas like perhaps you're sitting at your desk and you've been strongly focusing on whatever it is you've been working on. And so you want to take a little bit of a break. You're not going to get up and move away. You just decide not to focus on what's on your screen for a moment. And you let yourself relax. And your attention, your mind, maybe we'll say, moves off and you have some sort of a imaginative experience. Maybe you think yourself walking down the street to a park that's close to your home. Maybe you think about yourself walking on the beach. It can be many things. And in that experience, you you have these feelings show up inside of you. Or maybe there's a little bit of information that shows up as your mind does this with you about another individual, about a particular circumstance, whatever it might happen to be. Again, the information that we shared earlier, you're driving down the street and you get this prompting as you're driving to move from the left lane into the right lane, but you don't act on it. And you find that the lane that you're in, the traffic slows down and it stops. While the traffic in the lane next to you that you were prompted to move into keeps going. Turns out that after you've waited in that lane for 10 minutes and then things begin to move, there's an accident that occurred half a mile up in your lane. And now the authorities are there and they are moving people around so that individuals can begin to move. Now, certainly from where you were a half a mile back, you didn't know that that was occurring, but your intuition understood that that was going on, that part of yourself. You can smell something that's actually, we'll say it this way, not there to be smelled in that moment, but it brings you information about some future thing. You can smell maybe the way that the meal that you're about to eat at a friend's house that night who hasn't invited you to their house yet is going to smell. And so you smell this while you're at your desk. And maybe a half hour later, your friend comes up to you and say, "Hey, my wife and I haven't seen you, haven't had you over to the house for a while. We'd really love you to come over. She's going to make, this particular meal." And you're no longer even thinking about the smell that you had. And you agree. You say, "Okay, I'll do that." So you walk into the house, and as you walk in, your senses are afforded all the things that's going on in their environment. One of those is the smell of what's being cooked. And in that moment, you remember the smell that you had at your desk, and it was the same smell. So there can be a whole variety of things. So the idea is if you can think about there's this concept that you have on your planet, and it's used in a variety of ways. And there's this idea of radar, right? This energy that goes out and brings information back, and it's scanning for anything that's out there. So attempt to do that with your psyche, with your mind, with your awareness, maybe we'll say. Attempt to be attentive to those little things that show up within your consciousness that many times you just walk right past very quickly. You don't pay attention to them. Attempt to pay attention to those little thoughts that show up in your mind, especially those things that are a little bit out of place in that moment, and attempt to recall them, maybe even jot them down someplace, or go into your phone quickly into your notes and just write a little something down to them, whatever it might happen to be. And then see if there's something that occurs later that day or maybe in the next couple of days that has an association with that. That will help you to do more of that. That'll help to have those events that are impinging on your awareness become something that you pay attention to more. It won't need to be something that just walks in front of your eyes or a sound that you hear that's relatively audible, shall we say, or a strong smell. It'll be more subtle things. The concepts of, somebody reaching out and touching you lightly on the shoulder and you responding to that. So to be increasingly aware of that type of information that shows up in your life, you'll find will be helpful to you. Not only to be aware of that, but if you can, if there seems to be some sort of a directive in it, to then act on that as well. Those types of things will be helpful. They'll open doors, we'll say, to experiences that you wouldn't otherwise have, and experiences that will be additive to your experience of life.
Thank you.
So, again, we share all of this with individuals who, to this point in time, perhaps haven't been very interested in these types of ideas, because, as with our exploration of these two large wars that happened in the early part of your 1900s, this movement will affect you. It is affecting you. You are part of this movement. Even if nothing in your life, in a way that you pay attention to, suggests that to you yet. But you're part of this movement. And things are going to begin happening in your life, if they haven't already, that will show you that something different is going on in your existence. Because these types of things not only did not happen to you before, but as far as you are aware, weren't happening to anybody before. Now you're having these types of experiences. And so we just want to assure you that these are experiences that are happening with a large number of individuals. It's just that if you're not in the circles, you're not hearing that these things are typical to individuals. All right? If you're not exploring those types of things, you may think that there's something wrong with you because you're having things that should not be happening with your psyche. But this is not the case. The case is this is happening with an increasing number of individuals on your planet. It will continue to be the theme, and it will open up. It will be wider. There will be more transparency between this expression of you and the more encompassing expression of you, between the expression of you as the physical you and the expression of you as, maybe we'll say, the soul or the non-physical you. Again, the example of the way the 6-year-old saw the world versus the way the adult you sees the world and all the things that it's familiar with about the world. You're moving into that type of an experience, only the experience is that there's much more occurring about your reality than you're familiar with. Even if you explore some of your sciences, and you can almost pick any science, as you delve into that science, you will learn things about your reality that you were unfamiliar with because you did not explore that. One of the ones that might be the most confusing to you is a field called quantum physics. If you explored that, a certain amount of the information that is now familiar in metaphysical circles is explored in that area of your sciences. So you can do that if you want to, even as a metaphor, to understand that there is a huge amount of information out there that you are unfamiliar with. Now, not that that's wrong or bad or anything like that. It's just that you haven't taken the time to explore it. But this is going to be your experience. And so, understanding that your questioning is the way that it should be. You should be questioning because your reality is changing. If you're having interesting events, scary events, unexplainable events happening in your life, you are not the only one. It's happening to many, many, many individuals. Think now, and you may not know, you can explore if you would like to, the number of books that are written now by individuals who are in a field where they can explore the phenomenon of what's called near death experiences by individuals. This is something that 70 years ago was never spoken of in your society. Now there's a huge amount of information out there about these types of things that's happened with individuals, a large amount of information that you can search. Many, many individuals have explored this now. So there's continuing to be at your disposal information that's out there. This is one of the things that your information technology has set up for you, the ability to reach out into the information that's had and to have it at your disposal very quickly, because it's going to be important in this time period that you be able to do that, that you be able to see that there are other individuals that are having the same types of experiences that you are, that there's information out there that can help you to understand your experience. And in that regard, the only thing that we would have you pay attention to is that whatever source that you run into in that regard, that source should have a feeling of helpfulness about your experience or anybody's experience as their, shall we say, primary reason for sharing the information. In other words, it should be obvious to you that they're not making it about them and how their experience is so much more expansive than everybody else's. It should be about how they're explaining that your experience is every bit as valid as anybody else's experience. Your experience can be every bit as expansive as anybody else's experience. And what they are attempting to do is to help you understand, and we'll use this term in the moment, and become as much of you as you possibly can, if you have an interest in that. So we would make that suggestion in your exploration as well.
Thank you to say too. I think we are complete.
I think we are complete as well. So, as always, thank you very much for your participation. It is quite appreciated. And of course, we're speaking with Lucy at this moment, but all of you, of course, as well. And so, if you're new to this exploration, if you've had no interest in this exploration, if for whatever reason you're trying to understand this exploration, there are a large number of sources out there now that can provide information to you in this regard. Trust yourself in whatever you're drawn to in the moment and explore that, and explore it till you feel fulfilled in exploring it in that way, and then move on to whatever way you now feel excited to explore or interested in explore. And there may even be several that you're exploring at one time. Attempt not to be inhibited by your anxiety or your fears as you explore, even though you may have some of that go on, because of course there are many ideas that individuals carry about how and why things should or shouldn't be done. But if you're questioning you're questioning for a reason, and allow yourself to understand that that questioning is valid. And so explore what it is that answers your questions. And so we will leave all of you with that. Thank you very much.